Good evening, Redemption Church. Thank you for dealing with us tonight. We're dealing with a little bit of technical issues. Seems like every church across the country is using Vimeo Live right now. So we were having some challenges competing with all the other churches who are also doing live streaming tonight. So thank you guys for tuning in to Pastor's Talk. My name is Bobby Wood. I'm the teaching pastor here at Redemption Church. And we have on my right, Daniel Savage, our worship arts pastor. We have Nick Erickson, our leadership pastor, and Tim Lewis is unable to join us tonight, but we do have a special guest tonight, and that is Jenny Erickson. Woo-hoo. Nick Erickson's better half.
Much better.
And we thought tonight we would talk about ministry at home. As we started talking about Pastor's Talk and talked to a few other people and got some feedback, and some of you guys requested special guests and just to talk through different issues other than just seeing the same three of us up here week after week. And so Jenny reluctantly agreed to be on Pastor's Talk with us tonight and talk through the subject of ministry at home. Along with that, we're going to talk, as we talk through this tonight, feel free to submit your questions. You can ask us absolutely anything, theology, Bible questions. Not saying we're going to know all the answers, but we want to make this a time for you to submit questions, submit them on the Facebook live stream, or we have a fancy new service that we just got this week, and that is to text to 94000, that's 94,000, and write redemption question, all one word, redemption question, in the body of the text, along with your question. So it could be about absolutely anything. Please ask it, submit it, and we'd be happy to try to address it as best that we can. And hopefully we can make this a very interactive time with our church and with anybody else. If you're new, maybe Redemption Church is not your church home. We want to say welcome. Please say hi to us in the comments, just to say hello and where you're from or anything like that. So we'd love to get some interaction with you and also just to check in with how things are going in life. So to kind of start off tonight, I thought one thing about having Nick and Jenny especially on tonight is Jenny is a teacher. And so in the state of Utah, we just heard the news that school is done for the rest of the year. Well, not fully done, it's soft closure, which means that teachers have 5 times the amount of work because now they're teaching from home and they're trying to help parents teach from home as well. So they're teaching parents and they're teaching their kids. So they've added students, and parents are way harder to teach than kids are, along with being a mom who's also trying to help her kids learn at home. And while they've been doing that, trying to lead well, lead their kids through something as crazy as a pandemic, which none of us have any prior experience in dealing with before. And so I just want to kind of talk to you guys tonight and just kind of hear a little bit about, your story, hear about what you guys are doing through the middle of this crisis. And then also, we have younger kids. You guys have kids who are a little bit older than where our kids are at. Thought we can maybe have a good conversation about what life looks like at home, what ministry looks like, and then also even just from the teaching standpoint, being a teacher, teaching your kids, and also teaching as well. How can we as a church body, as followers of Christ, reach out to our teachers in our community, who are dealing with unprecedented challenges? So I want to start off, and what have you found to be some of the big challenges you guys are dealing with at home, with kids, and everything else that you guys have going on?
I would say some of the biggest challenges are just the logistics and scheduling of the day. So, Nick's been working from home since, August, September. And then here comes 4 more people. Well, actually at first just the kids joined him and I was still working. So we had the kids at home, I'm at work, and then here I come and trying to figure out, we don't have an office space, we don't have any of those kind of things, but manage it to where we all have the space we need to all do what we need to do throughout the day. I think that was the hardest, getting started.
Almost definitely.
Like figuring out what spot in the house to work in. Like,
yeah,
do you work here? Do you work there?
Because we don't have an office. So Nick was working on our porch, which worked great for him. And then we all kind of invaded it. And we had to have just conversations about that and share our feelings. And Nick had to be honest and say, I wasn't expecting that. So, which is fine. So we just move things around, and so we're in the kitchen, the kids and I, and he's still on the porch, and that seems to be working right now.
Yeah, like those are the logistic challenges of everybody's at home, you can't go anywhere, coffee shops are closed, restaurants are closed,
Library's closed.
all the places you could go retreat to, we're all having
Yeah.
to work together at home. And I think that you're right, that does present some unique challenges there.
An interesting challenge we've also learned too is everybody's using the bandwidth at the house too now, and so everyone's on a device, and you add extra devices in, and we had a small glitch yesterday or Monday. We fixed it, I think, but and there's nothing you can really do about that right now. You just kind of have to everyone be patient. And anyway, I know that's a small, minute thing, but probably every student and every family has devices for their kids, at least to a certain age up. And so, parents working from home as well.
I would say too, just the scheduling. Like, I'm working, Nick's working, and then we have 3 children doing school, and try to manage their schedules and what they need to complete, and me being able to help them if needed complete that work, because I do all of the work with the kids in their schoolwork, just because
It's best.
it's best for everyone.
Well, you are a teacher, so that has its own advantages. No offense, Nick.
They won't.
Yeah, they won't ask Nick. So it's also managing the schedules throughout the day of who I can help when, plus do my job at the same time, which becomes tricky, which also means more hours of work. I'm supposed to work like 8 to 4. I work whenever I start in the morning, usually before 8, and still have my computer up in the evening to answer emails, video chats from students, parents, whatever, throughout the evening. So it's just,
And I would
it's
imagine
never ending.
families like yours too have younger children who don't quite know how to navigate things. It's probably even harder because Ryan is pretty savvy, my 10-year-old, on a computer.
Yeah.
But Trey, what was it, 5, 6?
6.
Yeah, it's not quite at that point yet, or Sawyer not able to fully navigate. So that's the dynamic. Is not every household looks different too on what a parent can and cannot do.
Well, I mean, for us, and I don't know if you're the same way, Daniel, but everything's electronic, Zoom meetings, video conferencing. Kids don't understand what that means, and it's just dad's in his office. And my office happens to be underneath the kitchen and also the dining room. So anytime a chair scrapes across the floor, it sounds like we're having another earthquake. And I'm not totally sure these days if we are having a real earthquake or not, because we might be. And it's just loud. And so it's like you're trying to get things done, and then kids are, of course you don't want, the kids are trying to get their schoolwork done, and it's trying to figure out the logistics of what do you do, and can you guys be quiet for 5 minutes while I record this video that I need to send off to this church in, South Carolina or wherever else. So it's a unique challenge that we've got. What do you think is that what's some things that he's been showing you through this process, and with your family? What are some things maybe your kids, how are they dealing with it?
So I would say, like, in the beginning, a lot of it for us was like open communication, just being real to say, like, okay, I need this or whatever, like just being open and honest with each other. I mean, this is nothing that any of us have ever lived through. It's not like you can go get a book that says how to survive this pandemic. So I think that was our initial thing that we had to work on a lot, was just being honest about how I felt, how he felt, and our emotions my emotions from it. I think that was the beginning things that we learned right away.
I would say, to add to that, have a lot more grace with our kids than probably. We do want to raise them right. We do want to teach them right from wrong. But their world also got rocked and turned upside down. And so maybe not as quick to jump on them when they are not doing the things we want them to do, showing a little more grace, because they're still navigating this too. That's something that we would catch ourselves. Okay, maybe we don't yell as much. That doesn't mean we stop yelling, but we and we all get it with our kids that, that's just what children are designed to do, is to push those buttons. And so if I believe in truth, this is truth, right? If I believe in grace, I really need right now more than ever to show that to them. They really need to see that from me. I want it when we have our issues. I want her to forgive me. So our children need it just as much, and letting them also communicate openly.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I think before all of this, God was already working on me about just remembering that our kids are kids. Like sometimes I'm probably the only one, I'm just going to say that. I get mad at them for being kids, like, and doing kid things.
You're not the only one. I promise.
But God had been working on me, like, and I actually had a few people like talk to me about that, like, just remember they're kids. And I think that, like, it's almost like God's like, okay, I'm going to show you how much they're kids right now through all of this. And we have had to apologize to our kids for yelling at them, for getting frustrated. But I think too, just being very transparent with our kids, like, you know, one of our core values is transparent lives, and we talk about it all the time. But I think being really transparent with our kids through this, like our emotions, like I'm not really that much of an emotional person. I have cried so much through all of this. And I think letting the kids see that it's okay, that it's not that we're not trusting God through it, it's just there's a lot of emotions that go with this right now. So,
well, we talked about this last week on Pastor's Talk, you know, about with this whole pandemic, everybody, you know, had an expectation of how this year was going to play out. You know, and you think, okay, I've got a kindergartner who's not going to go to his kindergarten graduation. I've got a third grader who was in a play who she's not going to get to do her solo in her play. You know, like, and those are hard as parents to deal with, because, I mean, we love our children. We want to see them do that and see them enjoy those types of things. But now our kids are also dealing with that.
yeah.
And I think you're right. I mean, letting them be kids and helping them disciple them through some challenges like that. I mean, I think as parents, we're trying to figure out how to do that well. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, just even like realizing, like, this is a special time that God's given us. And it, to be honest with you, it didn't feel like a special time at first. It felt like everything was taken away. And trying to rethink and reshape that this is a time now with my children that we get more quality time. And maybe not all of it is as quality because I'm not allowing it to be, or, you know, it's one of those days. But I think just trying to rethink the way that we see our children. And honestly, God's been teaching me, you know, that, like you said, let your kids be kids. Kids are our blessing. I mean, God's given us this blessing in our children. And one day they're going to be out of the house and gone. And we're going to enjoy that time. Me and Lindsay are, you know, on vacation and be able to enjoy trips again. But at the same time, this is a special time that we can never get back. Yeah. And God's giving us that blessing, you know, with this time right now.
I think it's just, we've had to change our perspective of this. Like in the beginning it was, oh, we lost this, for us and the kids. But I think teaching them to look at it differently, look at the positives. What are good things that are happening because of this? You know, just even simple things like, you know, Emma decided to use her talent being able to sew and sew masks for people. We didn't ask her to do that. She was like, oh, I have this fabric. Someone gave me elastic. I can do that. I just think trying to look at those positives that can come from it and how you can help other people is a great way to think about it.
I've also been curious. I know, like, Dan's got 2 boys.
Young boys.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They're not. Like, how are you guys navigating? They need to let energy out. They're cooped in their home. What are you guys doing? And I know you're similar age demographic, but what are you guys doing? Because ours, they're a little easier.
Yeah, the days that it's warm, which are few and far between recently, those are probably our best days because they can play outside, they can run around, they can really burn off energy. They also do that inside the house, but then it's really loud and crazy. So, yeah, the last week, the couple of days we had where it was like sunshine, those were awesome. Every day's been awesome, but those have been really extra awesome. But, you know, Sawyer, he's 5.5. He is finishing up his preschool, and he's going to go to kindergarten in the fall. And so he was going to pre-K 2 days a week for a couple of hours, and he loved that time. He's a very social kid. He loved being there with his schoolmates. He hasn't really necessarily verbalized any, like, grief or loss over that. I mean, every once in a while he'll say, why don't I go to school anymore? But it's probably different from, like, your kids because of their age. But we've tried to find ways to not just occupy him, but help him learn certain things. So, like, for instance, he loves to color and draw. And so he's been making, for a while now, pictures, or we printed out pictures of favorite characters. He'll color them and then he'll give them to his friends. So, like, your kids have gotten a couple, I think.
Which my kids have loved, by the way.
That's awesome. All of his cousins who live miles and miles away, one day he did a picture of all their favorite superhero, and we taught him how to use the postal service. So like, he didn't know how mail worked, and so he colored his pictures. We showed him how to get an envelope, how to address it, how to put a stamp on it. For a while there, he thought that stamps, the postage stamp was just the return address stamp. He's like, oh, I'll put a stamp on it. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You actually need a stamp. Well, then he thought stamps just grew on trees, and so he was wanting to put a stamp on everything. We're like, those still cost money. You can't just go willy-nilly on it. But he got to learn, like, when you put a letter in the mailbox, where does it go? How does it work? And so even taking those moments to like teach him really simple things that normally you wouldn't think about teaching a 5-year-old how to use the mail system, but we got to because he was bored and he needed something to do, and so that was really neat to see him learn about that. Hudson's too, so he just runs around and they play a lot together, and he's been coloring a lot more on things that aren't just paper. We've had to clean a lot of marker off the table and the wall and the floor, but all in all, it's been really good. And one thing I've really thought a lot about, and I don't even have, again, kids school age, but many moons ago, kids didn't go to a schoolhouse. Maybe they did if it was a bigger city or something. But like you think about the Wild West, or like when people were moving out west, they learned at home, and that wasn't that long ago. And sometimes we kind of act like, oh, what are we going to do? I have to actually teach my kid. And some are gifted teachers like Jenny, so maybe it comes a little easier because that's your profession. But for those of us who that's not our job, at first it's kind of like, what am I supposed to do? But it's not always been like that. I mean, so I've tried to take the approach of, let's think back to times when we didn't have schools the way we do now, and people survived, people learned, people gained knowledge even at home. And I think for good or for bad, the way our school system works, maybe for a long time now, we've kind of like what we do with church sometimes too, where we just think, well, they'll learn everything they need to on Sunday morning at Sunday school. And we've kind of dished our discipleship off to church leaders as Christians. I think sometimes parents maybe do the same thing with school, and they don't take the time to teach their kids.
Oh, my teacher fixed all my kids' problems.
Yeah.
You've probably dealt with that a few times.
But then if you fix the problems,
Yeah,
who takes the credit for it?
right.
The
Not
parent.
the teacher, the parent does.
And so, thinking about households with kids in school, I would just, and I'm not there, but I would challenge you to look at how you can actually invest in your kid and your child, and one, gain a new appreciation for their teacher. I've seen that a lot, but also just realize like you have the ability to help them grow and learn, and it should, I think, change our perspective on how we view the public school system or the private school system, or those who actually go to school, to know we still have a responsibility as the family and as parents to teach our kids, even though they may go to public schools during the day in a normal time. We still have an opportunity to help them learn and grow outside of just homework or just what they're doing there.
Well, and that's a great point, and I wanted to address with you, Jenny, specifically, since we have you here today. But, talking about just that appreciation. I mean, now all of a sudden, all these parents are trying to figure out technology platforms and submit things for their kids and help them walk through all that. And I think, by and large, probably most parents are probably more appreciative of their kids' teachers. If their kids are in school or whatever, and so like for us, my wife was a teacher. Of course, we already have an appreciation there for teachers, but realizing how much goes into going above and beyond, for their kids. And I think sometimes some parents may think, well, what are you doing? You're on vacation. And which is probably the worst thing you can ever say to a teacher right now. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is that there is an appreciation there. So just kind of like on two sides of this, as a church, one, we just want to hear your story, your experience. Then two, as a church, how do we love the teachers in our community? And how do we share the gospel in the context of demonstrating that to teachers in our community?
Well, I think first of all, like as a teacher, I've heard the negative and the positive. probably right now a little bit more negative than positive. But one thing I did with our kids when this started was I said, listen, if something's not working, if you're not understanding and you have to communicate with your teacher, all of that right now is through email or video chat, whatever it's through, you need to be respectful in how you tell them because they're going to make mistakes. I mean, I set an assignment to open at 9 p.m. instead of 9 a.m. It happens, you know. It's just the approach in it. And so that's one thing that I've been on our kids about is be respectful. So Ryan's teacher had said, he's so respectful when I have to fix something. I'm like, okay, yes, good. May not always be at home, but he's doing it.
That's not all the time.
And then I encourage our kids to every week send an email thanking their teacher for what they've done. I mean, you may not love all the work, whatever, but it's encouraging from the teacher side to hear from the students. One, we miss the students, so just hearing from them is great. But then just to hear something positive from them. And I send our kids' teachers emails once a week, just saying, I appreciate you, thank you for what you're doing. I know it's like harder right now, you know, whatever it is, I try to be that same encouragement from the parent side to those teachers, because I know what they're doing right now is not easy, especially the teachers who don't know the technology. This is really hard for them. I would say as a church, the biggest thing you can do is pray for those teachers. I don't know of any teacher that went into education thinking, one day I will sit in my kitchen and teach my 100 kids on the computer back and forth. I mean, no one ever dreamed of this. So, you know, we're in uncharted waters here. We don't know what's going on. We don't know, I mean, even with, like you said, the soft closure, we don't even know the details yet. We don't know when officially school ends, when we have to stop the work. Like, we don't know any of those things. So we kind of live day to day, just waiting for more information. So I think just really praying for them. And if you personally know teachers, I think anything you can do to encourage them, whether it be, you know, just checking in on them, emailing them, texting them, whatever, just to check in and encourage them through this process would be great. It's harder, it was easier at the beginning when some of us were at work, of, you know, like delivering bagels and donuts and things like that. It's harder now because most of us aren't there, so it's harder to find the teachers to be able to be more of an encouragement to them.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, like they're at home, so I mean, to your point, if you know somebody who is a teacher, that's probably the best way to reach out to them. If you know, like your kids' teachers, if you know another one that's just you're friends with, reach out to them and throw an encouraging email. And I'm sure that probably goes a long way.
It
just
does.
to send a text, an email, praying for you today, thinking about you, whatever we can do. You know, I know you're doing a great job. I mean, I know everybody needs encouragement, but whenever you're dealing with something like this, and teaching already is hard enough as it is, but throw on top of that, you know, having to have parent-teacher meetings after hours. You know, it's not vacation when you're having phone calls on the weekends.
Right.
I mean, that's not anywhere close to vacation. You're in constant work mode. So I think they definitely need our prayers in that.
And I would say this now, know this is both a bias because I'm married to a beautiful teacher and I'm also a pastor. In the church, though, specifically, we understand that sinful people are going to behave like sinful people, and those that don't know Christ are going to behave like those that don't know Christ. But I'm telling you, church, if Jesus is your Lord and Savior, you walk through Easter weekend, you remember what He's done for you, don't be that person that is caught tearing people with your words. Early on, she got some stuff that hit her, and my wife is crying on the table because people are just coming at her. Now, I want to punch everybody. I won't punch anybody.
Glad you didn't do that.
But I want to do that.
Unless they deserved it.
Won't ever do that. But it hurts, though, because I know also some people who do know Christ are behaving so poorly. One thing we as a church can do is remember what we've been called to do, and that's to love and to care and share the gospel and do it in such a way that seasons salt. And so we get it when lost people behave that way. It makes sense. But we cannot afford to let it be those of us that have been redeemed and paid for by Jesus to be those people. And I realize it is a very small, like the squeaky wheel gets the oil kind of thing, very small amount of people that do it, but the words hurt and they sharp and they cut deep. And now, thankfully, Jenny's resilient and has, but as a husband watching it, man, you just want to go and wreck everybody because, come at her again. I'm like, can I have that email, please? And she's thankfully smart enough not to give me information. But as a church, though, we can be the change. But I think that even it transcends just even education. Watching us behave in our culture around us, I get that we're going to have short tempers and fuses, but we have to be able to have a sense of control and care and love as we engage people at the grocery store or people behaving like we don't want them to behave.
Yeah.
So,
And it does. It transcends teaching, right?
Yeah.
To you think you go to like dealing with government or dealing with somebody like at the DMV, you know, it's whoever's working there. Well, it's not their fault that the system is the way the system is. And sometimes I think we may treat people inappropriately because of just the other circumstances, forgetting that there's a person there. And I think to your point, realizing that no matter who they are, they've been made in the image of Christ. And our job as followers of Christ is to treat them in such a way that honors that and it honors the God that we serve, which is to love people the way that Jesus loved us. So, and I think to take that a step further, even if we are mistreated, we are still supposed to respond in grace and truth and love and kindness, and unless they deserve it. But other than that, we are supposed to demonstrate the love of Christ and sharing the gospel with our words, and then also in our actions, they should represent the Christ that we serve. And it is a shame if we are caught in that same trap that the world is in, because we have a hope that transcends all this crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so I think you're right. I mean, there's a necessary responsibility for us as followers of Christ to live out for His name. And the way that we respond to those things, when our kids are watching, people in the community are watching, and we don't do that because they're watching. We do that because we want to honor Jesus, but knowing that we want them to see Jesus in us and not see us.
Absolutely.
My mom was an educator for 30, 40 years. She was an elementary music teacher. And I can remember as a kid or maybe even a teenager, they got some new technology for her music classroom. Well, she's used to using a piano, little percussion instruments. She's not at all a computer person. She's not an iPad person. And we were amazed when she and my dad both finally got iPhones, but that's just not who she is. And I remember her coming home, this is, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, coming home like crying, wanting to quit her job because they were forcing this technology on her that, number one, she didn't understand. Number two, she didn't feel like it was the best way to teach. And so I can't imagine, like, if my mom she's retired now, but if she were still teaching today, she would have gone in an insane asylum probably. Because, like, with Zoom and with email and the way that we're having to do education now, I can't even picture my mom in that scenario. So I can only imagine what teachers are going through currently. Even ones who maybe are more astute technologically, just having to teach that way when that's not the norm, that's not what they're used to. So I would agree with all of that. Show grace and kindness, especially those of us who are followers of Christ. It gives us even a better opportunity to show the love of Christ through how we react and interact with our children's teachers.
Absolutely. Remember, we have about maybe 8 more minutes or so. And so if you want to send a question in, you can write it onto the Facebook page, which we've got phones up here, being able to take in questions, or you can text redemption question, all one word, no spacing, to 94,000, and we will get those texts and we can answer those questions.
We actually got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is less to do with kids, but our friend Ethan sent in a text message to that number, 94,000. He said, how do we love our spouse well during something like a pandemic?
Very good question.
Yeah,
Go.
great question.
Oh, okay.
For both of you, I want to hear both of you respond to this.
Well, I think a lot of it is what we've actually already talked about, like just the having more grace with each other. I mean, we're all on top of each other all the time now. There's no normally you go to work every day, you have that space, you have that time away, and then you come home and it's like, oh, how was your day? And it's more like, I know how your day was. I was with you all day. So I think it's just that having more grace with each other and openly communicating. Like, that's what we had to figure out very quickly at the beginning. We had to be honest with each other about how we felt and what was going on so that we could maneuver through this together.
I think one of the things that we early on kind of worked through in the communication is the easy way when we're frustrated is to retreat, to me find a task to do somewhere else and her go over here and, hey, I'm going to go to bed now. Okay, I'm going to stay up and do this. We kind of eliminated that, and we're like, okay, let's be together. Let's intentionally spend time working through these things. And they stung less. They were less harmful. I notice her giving me more grace than I deserve, by the way. I actually physically notice it. I can see it. And then at the same time, it's one of those things too, as a pastor, you would think it would be really easy for us to always spiritually care for each other. But it's really hard, just like any family. And so just even taking time, when we do these, she's at home on Sundays while I'm here. And so we're not worshiping there. She's normally not here while we're doing this. And so we haven't had a lot of those opportunities. So making sure we even spend time just in something we're working towards. We're not good at this, but trying to get better at intentionally leading each other that way. I think it's been better for us last week or two. I shouldn't have said that on camera because she could say no. And
Transparent lives.
that's
You were
right.
demonstrating that right now.
There's a hard call right there. I don't know.
I agree.
And I don't expect her to be perfect, and she doesn't expect me to be perfect. I'm not expecting dinner at 5 on the table, partly because we have no idea what we're doing at any point in time. But we're just like, hey, let's go with the rhythm of this. Kind of our litmus test is if everybody's in good shape, all right, everybody's happy. Happiness, not necessarily, but like they did their homework. Okay, we got that done. Now let's do the next thing. And I don't know. I know there's more that could be said about that one, but
Lindsay and I have tried to work through this. I mean, and again, your routine has been flipped upside down for everybody. So you're dealing with all these new challenges, and you're still trying to deal with your jobs. In the midst of these new challenges, new situations and housing and figuring out where you're going to be, and at the same time, you are with each other, so you would think, oh, we know what each other is dealing with, but you still have different experiences.
Yeah.
And I know for us, we've learned that we still have to talk through things, and have intentional time. Like when the kids are asleep, okay, let's talk through this. Let's walk through this situation. Let's talk about it. And realizing Lindsay and I deal with those situations differently. And so we experience them differently.
Yeah.
And so sometimes for me, I could be upset and not realize it, and then have to figure it out later why I'm upset, and then we process through that. Lindsay's a lot more in tune with herself than I am, and so she knows what she's feeling at the moment and can express that a whole lot better than I can. And so we can walk through that, and we have to figure out how to communicate well in the midst of all of that. And it's tough. I mean, I don't think there's an easy solution other than be gospel-centered, love each other the way that Jesus loved us, which is grace, which you guys have used that word over and over again. And I totally agree. It's that graciousness that has to be demonstrated because we are not perfect and we are going to mess up.
I think intentionality is also a big part of that. That's probably something we should do all the time.
Absolutely.
But especially now, in talking about finding times to actually talk to your spouse. Today even, I remember specifically, my wife was trying to tell me something, and she got cut off at least 5 times by one or the other, probably both boys. And she finally just said, "Can you just let me finish talking to Daddy just for a second?" And that's not just for this time. It happens a lot anyway, but especially now because everybody's in the house. And so finding ways to intentionally have a conversation. It's like, you think about marriage, and there are times in a non-pandemic era where you could be physically with your spouse every day and not communicate and not talk and not grow in your relationship. In our discipleship group, that's one of our questions we ask is, did you spend quality time with your spouse? And, sometimes it's like, well, we were around each other, but it wasn't
Right.
quality time.
Yeah.
Right.
We were in the same room, but she was watching a show. I was on my phone or my iPad, and you really have to work hard at being intentional
Absolutely.
about spending time with each other. I saw a cool post today from some friends from seminary, and she said she wanted to do something special for her husband. So, and they love their dates, So right now you can't really go on a date like you could before at a movie or even have dinner at a restaurant. And so she snuck their little TV trays into his truck, got a picnic blanket or whatever, and then they went to. She surprised him. She took him to a wing place or something, and they just had a date in the car, where no kids. It was just the two of them. But it was really special to him because one, they really enjoy their dates together and they haven't been able to. But also it showed how much she cared for him and she took the time to plan it, even though it was really simple. It wasn't anything elaborate. So I think those small touches too can be really impactful for our spouse, to plan something.
Absolutely.
Even if it's just going to get ice cream, to say, I thought enough of you, I thought about it enough to find somebody to watch the kids or get them something to do so the two of us could go somewhere.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I've not done that yet for Jana, and I need to. But I was reminded of that kind of thing on a Facebook post that I saw today.
You said something about, and this is my struggle, being on the phone. My biggest challenge, and I'll be completely 100% transparent, is like, especially through all this, it started on watching like news articles and you're trying to catch up with what's going on, and I'm just glued to this. And my wife is talking to me, and I'll be honest, because I'm watching this, I'm communicating back to her, but I am not listening. And so having to just set this down
Yeah.
and go, okay, this is on its charger, I'm leaving this here, and we are going to have intentional communication.
Yeah.
And being intentional about that. And that is one of my biggest challenges. I'm so ADD with myself that I don't always give my wife the attention she deserves.
Well, and I think too, like, because of your guys' jobs and what you do, I know for Nick, he'll say, well, I need to take this call right now, and most of the time I feel like I handle it pretty well. But there are times I'm really like, we're spending time together right now, like, you don't have to talk to Bobby. Like,
Yeah.
he'll understand.
Well,
But
I don't know about if I'll understand or not.
But I do think, like, because of your guys' jobs, I know that that's a lot of it for Nick, but there are times that's hard because I want that time too.
Yeah.
Just speaking as a woman.
And that goes back to like the boundaries thing, like, because our work hours now,
Yeah.
there's not like, here are your set work hours.
Yeah.
Our work hours and home hours are now blended and they're all over crazy.
Yeah.
So there's no separation. And so are we having quality time right now, or are we having work time? Are we in family mode, or are we in what
Yep.
mode are we in? And I think that's so hard to decipher.
I think that's been one of my challenges just as the mom, is like figuring out what hat I'm wearing at that moment. Am I the mom? Am I the at-home teacher? Am I the teacher that's teaching my students? Am I the coworker? Like, who am I at this moment? And I think because I'm trying to wear all of them at one time, that's where I end up letting my frustration out on the kids. It's not their fault, but they're the ones who usually get the blow from me being frustrated from all those hats I have to wear.
Well, I think the hard thing, we could attest this to, before this, from 7 in the morning to 4, I could work however I needed to. And I also knew I didn't have to worry about my family because they weren't there. So separation for me was really clear. And then at 3:34 when they got home, then I could stop that, move right on into this. When you're talking about the boundaries being moved, I think one of the things, and guys, I think we're the biggest proponents of this. I'm not saying women don't, but man, we really like things our way, and we want to have, like, it's having to snap out of this isn't just Nick. It's now everybody's affected by this. Like, I felt bad about the whole patio office thing because I'm not the only one trying to work. Like, they are too. Like, it was one of those things where it's not fair for me to tell them, hey, let me have all this space. You guys, that whole thing where I make money, well, so does she. And my kids are, so the selfishness, so one of the things, it's something we would do in premarital counseling anyway, right, is teaching us what we see in Scripture, what it means to fully give for the other. That right now more than ever, should you evaluate, maybe even reread that in Scripture, in Ephesians, and the other areas where God just really clearly articulates what it is that we are to be for our spouse, to give of ourselves like Christ did for the church. And it's hard. I'm really bad at it. But recognizing that my world is not the only world. It's our world. And I still will answer your call, Bobby, just so you know.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
Well, that probably concludes our time for Pastor's Talk today. Again, please submit questions. I mean, that can help shape even what we're going to be talking about for the week after. We've kind of talked this past week about maybe kind of how some future Pastor Talks will look. Some of them we based around even some of the things we're preaching on. I mean, we may deal with a tough subject in Scripture, maybe more theological in nature. We can talk through that here in this format, in this venue, which is a great opportunity to kind of go further and deeper from what we're studying in at the moment. So I encourage you, please submit questions. Redemption question to 94,000. Comment on Facebook. I mean, do whatever is good for you to submit those questions, and we'd love to talk about those topics here. About any topic you want to talk about, we will discuss it. And thanking Jenny for coming and joining us tonight, reluctantly, but you did a great job, so we appreciate it. And thank you guys again. Have a great week. God bless you. Again, focus on Jesus this week. How can you love your family this week? What are some ways you can do to be intentional about the way you love your spouse, the way that you love your kids? Maybe you're home by yourself. What are some ways you can be intentional about loving your neighbors, loving your family who don't live at home with you? Reaching out to some teachers in your neighborhood, in your community. Sending them an encouraging text, email, whatever it may be. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.